Alrighty. So I did my presentation on Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. I really enjoyed this book. It was actually really good. I thought it was a very special take on what is very common in the United States, mental illness and throughout the world. And, I think what really caught my eye was just having this little fuzzy little raccoon in here. And then to read to find out that it was one of her taxidermy raccoons. Um, I thought that was kind of hilarious. So, just to kind of touch base on like what the structure of this book is, or what this book is, um, in the title, it's pretty self-explanatory. It says it's a funny book about horrible things, and a lot of the horrible things that it talks about in the book, Jenny highlights a lot of her mental illness. Uh, we all know that depression, anxiety is something that like has become more highlighted in news and especially like in the classroom with students with executive functioning disabilities like ADHD, anxiety, OCD, and so on and so forth. So um, when I looked at the list of books, I thought this one was really exciting for me. I thought that this would be a good opportunity to really just kind of uh, see how either people that are older, or see how people have embodied their disabilities, and this is something that Jenny did very well. So to go into who wrote the book, Jenny Lawson. She's from Wall, Texas. She's an author of the Bloggist website, which is her uh, so-called call to stardom. This is where she's become, she's grown a very strong media presence via Twitter and her blog. She's been nominated, or her website's been nominated for the Forbes Top 100 websites for women. She also used to work for the Houston Chronicle. And she, as I said before, suffers from a variety of mental illnesses such as depression, anxiety, social, avoidant personality disorder, and OCD. But she was also a very talented writer, journalist, you name it. On paper, she knows how to get words down that are going to get the readers engaged. And she was voted, for this book and Broken, it was New York Times bestseller. So seeing that on the list, I was like, okay, we got some good titles here. So you see Jenny, and depression has no face. Mental illness has no face because the person can be the happiest they can ever be, but they can also have their own battles inside of them. And I think that Jenny, uh, throughout her book, um, does this very well, and she does tell a variety of stories from when she hurt her foot, from speaking in front of people, the social anxiety from that, and then just like suffering from depression in her hotel room, pulling out her hair and really just going through those obstacles. I personally would never understand because I've never gone through it, but I can feel for her and try to relate as best as possible. The whole structure of this book is it's really detailed with memoirs, stories, articles, and just fun and funny stories that she tells throughout the novel. And what she basically does is channel her inner energy and becomes furiously happy. And in this sense, what she really meant by this is out of frustration and to combat the depression, she forced herself to be happy. And I think that this is a very powerful statement, especially speaking to young Americans, the young adults of tomorrow, that she utilized this tool and embraced her illness and made something of it. I know this isn't the answer for everybody, but I thought that this was a particularly interesting take on what could, you know, lead to death or like suicide or, like severe social disabilities. Like, um, I just thought that like she's just a warrior and she put a spin on a very uh, dark thing in her life. So, just to give a little bit of an overview of the book, again, Fiercely Happy is an award-winning book that it's a collection of memoirs, essays, and funny stories. So many, as you can see in many of the, let's see here, I'll pull it up. Um, in many of in her book, there is her stories can be anywhere from like 1 to 2 pages, or they can be divided in chapters. And she uses the experience just to tell her on her daily life. Like this one that stood out to me was the fear. And she right off the get, she mentions that some stories are meant to be told, and she highlights a lot of her dark times and how she had to deal with people, and how her social anxiety used to get the best of her, and all her thoughts and used to get in her head. um, Really, like this whole book, uh, it just highlights mental illness, and it describes her daily obstacles. And really, it's just important as like an educator in the classroom to be like very aware, self-aware of like the surroundings, and really like understanding of the children. So because you never know what the kids are going through at home, and you never understand like really how they're generally feeling, because sometimes they're growing adults, they're growing children, they're going through puberty, and they start to have a lot of hormones, and start to have a lot of emotional needs, and sometimes they just don't know how to express themselves. And it relates to Jenny because like there was times where she felt that she was trapped. She didn't want to leave her house, she didn't want to leave her room, she didn't want to get out of bed. She had no idea how to battle this, and she just in her head she kept saying she can't, she can't, she can't, until the moment that urged her was to get up and just start going and living her life to the fullest. um, and that's how she proclaimed her life. Out of frustration, she just got up and really just started doing things that would technically make her happy, but doing it on purpose, knowing that she was actually depressed. So she used like her mood swings and her suicidal urges to create like the hashtag Furiously Happy, where that trend began on Twitter, and she started getting a strong following behind her fans, and her fan base started backing her up on that, and then she started using that energy, or as she says, that introverted geek energy, uh, to really reclaim her life. So I think that like if anyone is suffering from depression, I think that this book is a strong tool. I think that it provides a lot of insight and perspective to a thing that no one really has the answers to. And I think that this can really provide a tool, and like I said, another perspective to somebody who's battling depression or anxiety, and just by listening to her experiences and seeing how she overcome it can possibly motivate somebody else to overcome it. Which brings me to my first key point. Furiously happy. Jenny Lawson, in the loom of her depression, was over being depressed. Like I said, one day, like the one day that she was over pulling her hair and feeling sorry for herself, she got up and decided to battle her illness head on. She forced herself to being happy, and inevitably, like just by forcing her to be happy, forcing herself to feel what she should feel, enabled her to become more resilient to stress and depression. um, she was able to gain control of herself by doing so, and she embodied herself. She embraced her personality, and she appreciated who she was for what she had. She knows that she wasn't perfect, and she labeled herself as defective, but she knows that like she is the creator of her own success, and she had a strong tool, which is writing. She had a strong skill and passion that was in writing, and she was able to express herself, and she just embraced all her strengths and began to just really enjoy herself and enjoy life, and battle and circumvent like what it was to be depressed and anxious, or not even want to talk to people. But she challenged herself. uh, she was really odd in the sense that she loved taxidermy, and she just had a weird sense of humor. So she embraced those kind of things, and now her house is full of like taxidermy, and it's full of little furry animals, and she loves animals, but it was just like reminds me of like uh what's the actor's name? Like Steve Carell, in one of the movies he likes, where he has like the little mice taxidermies. It's pretty funny. But really, like I think that this first key point is very strong, because as a person, as you grow up and you get older, and you start to understand yourself and align yourself with your goals and what you're trying to achieve, in your professional or personal life, um, it's just real important that you push yourself through the obstacles. It's very important that you understand what the obstacles are, and that you have to stay motivated to not let yourself fall to them. And which I think is super interesting on how Jenny did that. Key point number two. So one of the biggest things that like when I was reading was that Jenny talked about her daughter. Um, she introduces her daughter in the book, and she really just tells us how much of an opposite she is to her daughter. Like her daughter is nothing like her, and she is proud of that. But something deep down in her head also tells her that um, that she could potentially just be through but through genetics that she could it could end up being like her. And so she basically raises her to just be lively and happy, but also in the back of her mind that um that it's okay, that she's okay and that she embraces her. Even though that she knows that she has a greater chance of developing the condition, she she understands that it definitely won't happen. Um, she just really worried a lot about how because she wasn't as socially like an extroverted, that would like affect her ability to socialize with her daughter in a negative way. But she understands that like, hey, you have to appreciate the happy moments that they're together and make positive memories for her. But and then another thing is she's always tweeting about her and she's always proud. And one of the things that I appreciated about Jenny was that like she wasn't afraid to say what she wanted to say, especially online. And it's just real important to understand that her voice was heard and that she had a presence in her community. Another key point was the internet, like building off of what I just said. Lawson really, excuse me, uses the internet as her outlet of emotion. She tweets about everything. She blogs about everything. And here, in a moment, you can see that she's also recognized by a bunch of journals, like I said, the Houston Chronicle, Forbes, and here's just an example of her blog, the Bloggess, and that's her daughter. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm linking the log, and she's constantly just showing off her daughter and her growth, and she's also talking about her emotions and what's happening in her life on a daily basis. Um, she definitely admits that she hates leaving the house. She's actually scared to leave the house, and that she just likes to stay home and be with her family, her taxidermy, and blog and be on the internet and connect with her fans and communicate with them. She really respects that she has her blog is her pedestal and that she is able to like facilitate conversation through her fans that way. But she's also like talking about a lot of social actions. Um, there's times that even in times of distress, there was times that in the book where she talks about how she fell and hurt herself, and she was very um distressed, and the first thing she did was like look at her blog and blog about it, and her fans told her a lot of jokes to calm her down. And it just goes to show that like just because the person's not there, that doesn't mean they can't connect with her in a different way. In this case, it was like Twitter and her blog. um, it's an interesting world, especially like I grew up gaming, playing a lot of video games and having an online community and having a bunch of friends that I've never met, but that we all share the same passion of playing the same video games and talking and connecting each other that way. So I can see that like this being an important outlet for her, being able uh, to just use her voice and be herself and not worry about judgment. And I think in the classroom, that's a very important part, especially because I'm a high school teacher. You have a lot of students who are embarrassed to talk in front of kids. Yeah, they don't want to be wrong, and they really just, want to be heard, but like they also don't want. They're scared of telling the wrong thing. Uh, and she just really embodies being an introvert, and she made it a norm in her following, and she said it's okay. Like, hey, I don't like going out, I don't like talking to people, but that's okay. This is what I like to do, and this is how I like to do things, and that's totally fine. But if you don't like doing it that way, that's also fine. And I think that like she vocalizes a lot of acceptance and respect to her community, that like she deserves that praise. um I thought the book was very simple in the sense of structure, and I thought highlighting some of the key facts of like or key stories and points that I really that really stood out to me. But if you if you're really looking for a different structured book, and you want it to deal with a little bit of mental illness, or I won't say a little, a lot of mental illness, this is a great read. I say this because I know there's students, I know there's other educators that are looking to handle situations like this and look for different outlets rather than just reading a factual book. And I think that understanding perspective and learning from other people is more valuable than looking at a clinical psychology book. Even though that also provides great facts, but I think having real life examples and seeing how other people deal with scenarios is also important. I could really appreciate how Jenny was brave. I think she's a hero for what she did, and writing this book and winning a lot of awards was much deserved because she embraced her battles and made light out of darkness. And in life, there's a lot of darkness, and we also have to make a lot of light out of it and see and not let it consume us. Um, and this, like I said, it relates so much to the classroom because we don't really know what the students are going through. I think that embrace using being furiously happy and pushing yourself through those dark times and keeping a smile on your face, even though like at the end of the day, stuff's hard, and you have to have a good attitude about it, and just keeping a positive attitude can get you a long way. And it's also very important to be mindful and open-minded to signs of depression. And what I say about this is, hey, if you see a kid acting weird, if you see somebody not acting themselves, don't be scared to go say, hey, is everything okay? Like that's free. That courtesy doesn't cost you much. And I think that Jenny really brings to light mental illness and how important it is to really check up on people. And I think that this book really made an impact, and it's definitely something I would definitely read again in the future. Um, but that's my presentation uh, on Furiously Happy. Thank you.